This video will be obviously could be perceived as anti-Belarusian. It will be in 4 parts. Firstly, I will explain what the phenomenon is. Then I will present the evidence. Then I'll do a sort of military-like analysis of why it is a threat, and some final remarks. And after that, as Piotr mentioned, we will have a discussion. Please don't believe it. Please stay respectful. Piotr is a really nice guy, and he's one of the few Belarusians that are actually willing to listen and to acknowledge that there is some kind of problem. So the term itself, Litvinism, has been coined by Dr. Tomas Baranauskas. He described it as a fusion between Tsarist revisionistic propaganda and Polish disinformation campaigns in the beginning of the 20th century during the armed military conflict for Vilnius. It is an ideology based on false interpretation of facts and conspiracy theory, according to which the true Lithuanians are Belarusians and we are only some magicians or some kind of Lietuvisai, Lithuanian in English. With the help of the Russian occupiers, we have falsified the history, stolen the Belarusian identity, and in modern times have bribed the nasty Western historians to spread our narrative. This last part is the one that makes it a conspiracy theory, and you would not believe how many Belarusians actually treat this as a real factual issue, that Lithuanians have bribed Western historians. Their goal is to reclaim their true identity, the true name of Lithuanians and Lithuania. So their goal is to reclaim their true identity and the true history of Lithuania and Lithuanians. In more radical cases, there is territorial claim for Vilnius, and some of them want to rename us as Samogicians, or at the very least as Lietuvians and Lietuva. Lietuva, Lietuvisi. So what are those Lietuva, Lietuvisi and Lietuva, Lietuvians? This is the vocabulary by which you can recognize a Litvinist, or at least someone who sympathizes with the ideology. They use these terms to emphasize their supposedly superior Slavic nationality. They also are making fun of our language. They think that it is very funny that our Lithuanian language is one of the most archaic languages in the world. And they also display some form of chauvinism. They say that we, for a very long time, lacked metalwork, writing, and until the Ruthenians came to save us, we are basically nothing, thus reinforcing their supposedly innate civilizational superiority of Slavic world. If you are interested more in how these terms came to be in the evolution of Litvinism, I recommend this article by Darius Sutkus. This is from the official outlet of Lithuanian military forces. They go very deep with every possible source mentioned, and they explain in great detail why those terms are, in simplest terms, bullshit, and why they do not belong in any proper self-respecting language. Those terms were invented by Poles during the armed conflict for Vilnius, but in fact they only used it for like 20 or 30 years. After that, those terms disappeared, and they remained the relic of Tarashkevitsa, one of the forms of Belarusian grammar. Now, I have prepared a video of evidence so that we all understand what actually caused all this dialogue about Litvinism. What is the actual problem here?
Neseniai Lietuvos naujienų portaluose buvo aptarinėjami nežinomų provokatorių teiginiai, kurie žemina Lietuvą ir lietuvius. Patikinsiu jūs, kad tokių antilietuviškų teiginių Baltarusijos visuomenėje nėra daug ir jie nėra reikšmingi.
Niekas apie tai negalvoja ir nemato. Žinokit, čia mes žinom, kad čia banda iš tikrųjų tai KGB ir Maskva, tam Kremlinas daryti, kad mes nesame kartu. Iš tikrųjų, niekas apie tai negalvoja.
Let's take a look at what Belarusians in exile are saying about Lithuanian history and why it has caused such a fuss.
Нарешті, четверте, опошнє по хронології і найбільш відоме сьогодні значення терміна Литва – це назва країни північної сусідки Білорусі, Республіка Литва. Пасля Першай световай вайны нашым суседзям удалося здабыць і утрымаць незалежную дзяржаву і перацягнуць на сябе коўдру, прысвоіць усю гісторыю Великого Княжества Литовского, у тым ліку назвы Літва і літоўцы. І хоць нашы суседзі называюць сябе літувяй, краіну Літува, але настойваюць, каб і ў беларускай мове мы называлі іх абавязкова літоўцы і Літва. Гэта робіцца таму, што праз простае сугучча назваў Літвы гістарычнай і сучаснай уся гісторыя Великого Княжества Литовского подавалася як історія національна літовісів.
Тива тešklausiu, jo kodėl sunaudoja lietuvisų pavadinimą – lietuvis. Sako, tam, kad parodyti lietuviam pagarbą.
Вучыць, напрыклад, дакументах літовец, літвін, літоўскі. У 90% нават больш это гаворка ідзе пра жыхара Менска, пра жыхара Украіны, пра жыхара Кіева. Я для адзначэння сучаснай краіны і сучаснага народа карыстаюся іхнім алтонімам, саманазвай. Літува, літувісы.
Навука ввогуле не ведае такой з'явы, як сярэднявечны балцкі горад. Усе яны вынік каланізацыі, нямецкай, беларускай, трохі менш дацкай. Немцы і датчане заснавалі гарады на латышскіх, эстонскіх землях бліжэй да мора, а беларусы ішлі з другога боку. Яны фундавалі новыя гарадскія паселішчы ў суседніх літувіцкіх і латышскіх землях.
So this is a very academic and business-like explanation. Most Litwinists speak much more aggressively and demean Lithuanians to a much greater extent.
У 12 стагоддзі полацкія кравічы заснавалі Вільню на сённяшняй гаре Гедыміна, высокім замку, на тым месцы, дзе 2 стагоддзі раней было закінутае балцкае паселішча.
Vilnius Baltarusių miestas ar ne?
This is an interview with Alexander Krosevich published by Nasha Niva. Timothy Snyder has neither written nor said anything of the kind. And at the end of the interview, Krosevich quite plainly states that the new Belarusian generation will grow up and deal with Lithuanians.
Великое Княжество Литовское и сокращенно Литва. А с вами будем помнить, что Литва в историческом прошлом это Беларусь.
This is the book by Vladimir Arlau. And here are the kind of mystical and fantastical things he writes. According to him, Kelnavia and Vilnius are colonies of the Polotsk Principality. In fact, there are no archaeological evidence to support these claims whatsoever. In this passage, the author explicitly states that Lithuania should be renamed Lietuva, Lithuanians to Lituvians, and Lithuanian language to Lituvian. And this is how he lies when he is confronted in person.
Почему вы думаете, что Каменену надо отделить от Великого Княжества Литовского?
Но я не думаю.
Мене з Чимайсії возникла Литва.
Перше питання, яке задає соціал-демократ. Скажіть, а що буде з ними? А як ви будете рішати свій вопрос? У їх вот тут сидіть, а що з ними буде? Розумієте, по сьогоднішній день не появилось. І по сьогоднішній день...
Це ваші претензії на війну?
Ну так, вони ж це розуміють. Це ж підспудно сидіть, усе. Тому що ну, там ніякого права, там же зроблено було.
Zenonas Pozniakas mūsų aplieja šaltų vandenį. O, viskas gerai, mūsų santykiai bus geri, bet turėkite omeny, iškils Vilniaus klausimas. Mes turim Baltarusijoje 2 sostinės, senąją sostinę Vilnių ir naują sostinę Minską. Nei vienos mes jum neatiduosim.
Čia kurie metai?
21. Tik po mūsų nepriklausomybės paskelbimo.
Liūdnos istorijos susijusios su Šuškevičium ir Pozniaku. Nemėgstu aš šitų veikėjų. Ir Pozniakas sakė, mes atvažiavome aptarti Vilniaus krašto kondominiumo klausimą. Kondominiumas tai yra valdymas iš 2 sostinių. Tai buvo vienas iš tų retų atvejų, kai aš tikrai išsigandau ir galvoju, jie atvažiavo paskelbti karo.
По приказу Екатерины II нас, белорусов, нас, литвинов, назвали белорусами.
This lady is Natalia Radna, one of the first to flee Lukashenko's regime. Lithuania granted her asylum. There she registered her portal Charter 97. These are former Charter 97 company details, and here are the remarkable things written on it. Pay attention to the number of views. According to Charter 97, Lithuania is just Samogitia, or the Republic of Lietuva. The Grand Duchy of Lithuania was Belarus, not only in the title, but also explicitly stated as such in the text itself. The claim I'm about to show is completely false and misleading. The theory that Lithuania expanded thanks to the goodwill of Ruthenian princes is a well-known Muscovite fallacy as old as Ivan the Terrible. The expansion was carried out by military force and/or political coercion. Rhinos activities are funded by the Lithuanian Ministry of Foreign Affairs via the Fund for Development Cooperation. Paradoxically and ironically, in 2020 she received 30,000 euros to fight Russian propaganda in Belarus, and another 30,000 euros in 2019. Yet another 30,000 euros in 2018 for the dissemination of independent information and transfer of Lithuanian experience to Belarus. One really could not make this shit up. And another 30,000 euros back in 2017. A whopping 120 euros of Lithuanian taxpayers' money for this utter and absolute disinformation. And here she is posing with the current Minister of Foreign Affairs at the ministry itself.
Изначально в состав литовского государства вошли земли современной Беларуси. Полоцкая, Витебская и Минская. Его первой столицей стал город Новогрудок, ныне Гродненская область. Язык, на котором говорили в Великом Княжестве Литовском, был русский язык. Это не был нынешний литовский язык. На нем говорил народ Жмуть, который был присоединен к ВКЛ в результате победы над Ливонским морем.
We, the people of Grand Lithuania, Belarus, appeal to the government of Žemaitija, Lietuvos Respublika, Žemaitija of Žemaitija.
Петицию от великого литовского народа передали жмутинскому, литовскому и уже забрали жмутское посадие. Жмутинок жмуть, все.
This is a letter from the dynamic duo of Zanka and Kawalanka delivered to the Lithuanian embassy in Poland. It sets out the following demands: to return the Vilnius region, to apologize for past wrongdoings to the Belarusian people, to renounce the name Lithuania, Litva, to rename the country to Samogitia, to stop using the chase symbol, and so on and on and on.
Nereikia galvoti, kad tai kažkokie tai marginalai. Iš tikrųjų, aš manau, kad vidutinis statistinis baltarusis, jeigu šiandien jo paklausim, ką jis galvoja apie LDK istoriją, apie Vilnių, maždaug taip ir pasakys, kad Vilnius Baltarusių miestas, kad pavadinimas Litva, tai čia Baltarusių pavadinimas, o Lietuva tai čia kita jau šalis, jau Žemaitija tik tai. Pasyvių, kurie girdi tą ideologiją, jų kur kas daugiau. Tai šimtai tūkstančių, o gal net ir milijonai.
То, что и для белорусов литовцы это скорее такие, как тучела, на которые вот удобно бросаться с нападками и обвинять во всех грехах. И можно встретить даже мнение, что вот как бы вот во всех белорусских бедах в итоге виновны литовцы. Почему? Потому что вы украли наше настоящее название Литва, как бы, да, и как бы переврали историю, и вот поэтому мы, белорусы, травмированные и не можем создать себе нормальное общество и государство.
Savaitgalį naktiniame Vilniuje prie atsargos karininko Zariaus Antanaičio priėjo baltarusis.
Aktyviai priekabavo prie aplinkinio lietuvio, aiškindamas rusų kalbą, kad Vilnius priklausė Baltarusijai, kad mes esame tik Kaune gyvenantis ir Žemaitijoje gyvenantis žmonės, o visas Vilnius ir visa rytinė Lietuvos dalis yra Baltarusijos.
Больше всего интересно, потому что все-таки Вильнюс, скажем, исконно белорусский город, было интересно посмотреть в этом плане.
Исконно белорусский город?
Ну, потому что было раньше ВКЛ, вот, столица была Вильнюс. Ну и там во время Советского Союза, в общем, отдали в Литву эту всю движуху, насколько я помню, не буду привирать, но в целом, то есть он имеет белорусские корни город.
Aš turėjau džiaugsmą dėstyti atiems baltarusių studentams. Tiems tokiems demokratus Lukašenka šiuo didesnių šovinistų, nacionalistų aš nesutikau. jie aiškino man, kad mes iš vis esame niekasčiai, kad mes iš jų atėmėm visus herojus ir aš paskui pavogėm, atėmėm kunigaikščius jų.
У найновшій історії літвінську спадщину фактично опанували сьогоднішні літовці. Мовляв, ми і тільки ми є нащадками тих історичних літвінів і їх держави. Але те ж там серце державу склали з'єднані заходні Білорусі з такими умацованими городами, як Новопрадок, Поколись, Городня, Слонім і інші.
This is a classic false narrative promoted by Litvinists, in which the core of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania was in Novobrudok or around it. In this slightly older Budzma Belarusimi article, it is stated that no one can change the fact that Lithuanians were a disenfranchised national minority within the Grand Duchy of Lithuania.
Вильня, як моноэтничный город, это не Вильня, это фигня некая.
Дали, не мог тиктока, часто вышел князем Линдона, и тут мы затямить спустим с тобой, да ты белорус, называй твое на платье, я видим княжеством литовским, сербом погони, сановским войском, покрочим дали своим шляхом плылым, князьки дыми за основы или сон легендарный, фалчару лада, на Википедии проекта богата.
Верит своего, шалиды народ, белорусский народ.
Год 1362, шараться тидри молодости, наши японские синие воды, ростки троха золотой роды, и княжество литовское Европа отправилось войнейшей державы Европы. Давайте далее раскопать свита, княжеский литовский, даже твита, литовский порным нам погрожает, группа там буква все выражает, видом сираю пилотским королем, крыжаком отправили в металлолом.
Великое Княжество Литовское, русское и жамойцкое. Литовское — это мы, русское — это, собственно, Украина, и жамойцкое — это вот те наши опорные весные братья, которые сегодня называются Литва.
Вот смотрите, тот же Жулягомский, например, генерал Жулягомский, основатель Средней Литвы, это когда, собственно говоря, белорусы, западные белорусы, или, можно сказать, что исторические литвины, собрались и пошли, собственно говоря, полностью залили теперешнюю столицу, вот теперешнюю Литву. И никто не сопротивлялся, кстати, потому что свои пришли. Поэтому вот опять же в кругу этой интеллигенции тоже Чеслав Мулаш когда-то поднимал вопрос, смотрите, чтобы Вильня не стала нашим Иерусалимом. Иерусалим, он не может принадлежать данному народу. И когда начинается приватизация Иерусалима, то вот отсюда и начинается Вильня. Он должен быть открыт для всех.
This gentleman is the chief of staff of the Kalinowski regiment, Pavel Kuchta. And according to him, we have performed very poorly in our history lessons. We should be learning where Lithuania was and where Samojisha was. This is another member of the Kalinowski regiment, Alech Ochinikau. Here is proof that he truly belongs to the unit. This is his TikTok account. Under this post, he considers Lithuania to be Samojisha and claims that our coat of arms should be a bear. This is his Facebook account. Here is his post featuring such lovely sweatshirts. Here's Alech wearing the sweatshirt himself. And this clothing looks innocently similar to certain other sweatshirts. This skull is a symbol of peace and tranquility from the times of Nazi Germany. And if you require more proof, pay attention to the officer's collar. The white race, please remember this, it will be very important shortly. In the comments under the post in question, Alec shares a Telegram group called Belarusian Resistance, in which there was the white race page with the graphic design we have already seen. And of course, other near and dear to the heart symbols from the times when everyone lived happily ever after.
А их соправным гербом был Локис, медведь. Это был традиционный герб староства Жамойцкого, сучасной Литвы. І навіть у 1938 році планувалося у парламенті у Сеймі Республіки Литва розглядати питання об тим, як вернутися до свого традиційного гербу, на этого медведя. Локis, гэта по-литовску, по-жамойску.
Labiausiai keista, kad tam tikros, sakykime, Baltarusių diasporos asmenys
kurie yra išvykę į vakarus, kurie pristato save kaip opoziciją tuos naratyvus Kremliaus ir KGB sukurtus kartoj. Neigiamas mūsų apskritai tautinis identitetas, nes mes tampam tik tai, kaip ir Baltarusiai teigia, lietuvisais, ne lietuviais, tais ne litvinais, kaip jie sako, nes jie tikrai litvinai, ir mes tampam kartais tik tai žemaičiais, na tai kas reiškia mūsų kertama per mūsų lietuvišką identitetą, nuneigiant mūsų tautybę.
Lietuvos kariuomenės strateginės komunikacijos departamento atstovų teigimu, tokia istorijos samprata kaimyninės šalies piliečių mąstyme tai grėsmė nacionaliniam saugumui.
Ką mes matom kartais, kada atvyksta turistai Baltarusių, kurie aiškina, kad tai yra Baltarusijos sostinė buvus ir kad tai yra baltarusiškas Vilnius, pavyzdžiui, ir kad greičiausiai, jeigu kiltų kažkoks karinis konfliktas, nebūtų sunku, panaudojant psichologinės informacinės operacijas, sutelkti visuomenę tam, kad jie eitų atsiimti savo Vilnius.
Let's take a look at what the representatives of the Minsk regime are saying.
Дзень добрый добрым людям. Сегодня мы начнем размову про город нашей Мары, нашу историческую столицу, нашу крыльскую Мекку, нашу Вильню. У разномовных гістарычных старажытных тэкстах вы знойдзеце Вільно, Вільна, Вільня, а ви ніколі Вільнюс. Вы засновали гэты дзівосны горад, гістарычную сталіцу Великого Княжества Литовского наши продкі, усходнія славяне, крывічы. Вільня можа быць замежам у беларускай дзяржавы, але яна заўсёды мусіць заставацца ў нашым сэрцы, у нашай гістарычнай памяці. Горад нашай Мары, наш беларускі Росавіль, наш символ белорусской величи, наш символ белорусской вечности.
Мои ученики часто меня спрашивают, является литовским такое государство, как Великое Княжество Литовское? Я отвечаю, конечно же нет, это белорусское государство. Столицей Великого Княжества Литовского является наш белорусский город Новоград. Почему же оно называлось Литовским? Все просто. Дело в том, что первым князем нашего белорусского государства был литовский уникас Миндовк. Он был выходцем из балтского племени Литва, которое располагалось на наших землях. Вот и весь секрет.
An important point. Belarusians are taught Litvinist narratives from their school days.
А кто по поделению главный наследник ВКЛ? Я в ахуе просто, блядь. Я просто в ахуе. Ни языка, ни столиц, ни власти, ничего их не было при основании в это государство, но только то, что у них наш Вильна и то, что они назывались Литвой, все. И самое жалкое, самое обидное, что для многих это действительно, это доказательство.
Let's take a look at what the cockroach Lukashenko himself is saying. According to him, the main elements of the statehood are the majority of the population, in this case Slavs, the language of writing, the so-called Slavic chancery, and the religious affiliation of the majority of the population, in this case Orthodoxy.
Мы даже не напоминаем сегодня им о том, что Белосток и Белостокчина – это белорусские земли, что Вильна – это тоже белорусский город и земли вокруг. Мы же об этом не говорим.
Ir iš pradžių tai atrodė labai juokinga, iki 2013 metų ZAPAD pratybų, kai mes pamatėm, kad per aktyvėje pratybų fazę, kaip ir mūsų sienų prikaupta tiek iš Karaliaučiaus ir Baltarusijos pusės daugybė pajėgų, pradedami transliuoti iš Rusijos politikų, iš Baltarusijos pseudoistorikų tas pats naratyvas, kad štai Vilnius turi priklausyti Baltarusijai, Lukašenkai, todėl, kad viduramžiais Lietuvos karalystė vėliau didžioji kunigaikštystė buvo sukurta būtent Baltarusijai.
We have already seen that the statements of the diaspora are no different from the messages of Lukashenko's regime. Maybe they are different in some way from the Kremlin's mouthpieces.
Давайте поговорим о Литве, точнее о Беларуси, точнее о Великом Княжестве Литовском. И если под этим соусом Александр Григорьевич вернет нам, к примеру, старинный русский город Вильну, то я ему поаплодирую.
Wait a second, this is the same crap that Pасьля, Крусевич, Bulba, Marzalu and Lukashenko himself are preaching.
Из вот Орды на третьем этапе русской истории появляется не только одна Русь, наша, московская, а две. И еще одна Русь тоже есть, это то, что называется Русь Литовская. Великое Княжество Литовское, которое, как мы увидим, в определенные периоды состоит этнически на 80% из русских, исповедует православие и в большинстве своем, и на самом деле претендует на то, что русская история будет двигаться в другом направлении.
Another very important point, Litvinism, which has poisoned the Belarusian national revival, fits perfectly like a piece of a puzzle with the Ruski Mir ideology. The only small leap they need to make is to consider the White Russians to be of Baltic origin. Every other false narrative, the first capital of Novogrudok, the supposed vital importance of Russian culture, Belarusians being the true Lithuanians, and the proud members of the three-part Russian family, the voluntary union of equals between Lithuanians, well, Belarusians, with other Rus lands, etc., is already in use.
Оно начало постепенно тянуться к другому магниту, к тому центру, который складывался в Европе. Это было Великое Литовское княжество. Его даже называли литовско-русское, потому что русские составляли значительную часть этого государства. И разговаривали на древнерусском языке, были православными.
Kuo vis dėlto tas litvinizmas jūsų akimis yra pavojingas Lietuvai? Nes yra netgi ir istorikai, kurie taip sarkastiškai vertina mūsų dalies, aišku, nepasitenkinimą ir baimės, nes mes bijom, esame mažučiai, už tai bijom čia kažko. Iš tikrųjų, čia ta teorija visiškai yra nei skausminga, nei pavojinga. Kas leidžia daryti išvadą, kad tai vis dėlto pavojinga jūsų akimis teorija?
Tai tiesiog pavojinga mūsų valstybė ir mūsų suverenitetui. Dėl to, kad istorijos perrašymas yra gerai žinoma kaip propagandos priemonė arba technika. Kad žiūrovai mūsų suprastų, žaliukai, partizanai šaudė žydus. Istorijos perrašymas. Lietuva pati savanoriškai įstojo į Sovietų sąjungą. Istorijos perrašymas. Savi šaudė į savus. Istorijos perrašymas. Lietuvos niekada nebuvo, kaip sakė Žirinovskis, tas pas, kuris čia nebuvo paminėtas, bet еще naratyvas Šauliai Panevėžys į Kaunas, маленькое Литовское княжество. Išvertus į lietuvių kalbą, Šauliai Panevėžys ir Kaunas, mažytė lietuviška kunigaikštystė, kuriai mes neturime priekaištų ir problemų, tai buvo ten ir gyveno. O visa kita, tai yra arba Rusija, arba Baltarusija. Bet Baltarusija suprantama Rusija kaip Rusijos dalis. Kitaip sakant, perrašant istoriją visada atsiranda galimybė vėliau pritaikyti ją, reiškiant pretenzijas, teritorinės pretenzijas. Ką mes matėme, pavyzdžiui, nacistinės Vokietijos atveju, kai pačioje pradžioje Hitleris atsiima Vokietijai priklausantį Sudetų kraštą, ne? Labai geras pavyzdys. Tai turint tokį naratyvą, turint tokį istorinį pasakojimą, paskui galima jau eiti ir toliau ir sakyti, tai palauk, tai čia mūsų teritorija, mes atsiimsime, kas mums priklauso, mes neimsim, kas mums nepriklauso. Aš kažkokio kalbu kabutės.
They're all singing almost the same little tune, so maybe the Lithuanians are the ones who are mistaken. Could it really be that everyone else is wrong while Lithuanians alone are the most wonderful, the brightest and the bestest?
Lithuania is a large yellow country to the right. Lithuanians spoke a Baltic language, which is not Slavic at all, and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania was a very interesting state. The Lithuanians themselves were pagans. It was the last pagan-ruled state in Europe, and they only converted to Christianity as a result of the Polish-Lithuanian Union. They became Catholic after 1386. But the Grand Duchy of Lithuania also included large numbers, in fact a majority, of Eastern Orthodox Slavs who spoke Ruski, a language which one can call Ruthenian in English these days, but which is the ancestor of modern Ukrainian and modern Belarusian. And yet, in the period after the Mongol invasion, this small pagan tribe from the northeastern corner of Europe swept up many of the lands of old Kievan Rus destroyed by the Mongols and produced this conglomerate state that stretched pretty much from the Baltic to the Black Sea.
What is Lithuania? And how could Lithuania be so? I mean, isn't Lithuania just this tiny country? It's this tiny country filled with Baltic speakers. How can it? It was the biggest country in Europe, my friends. It was the biggest country in Europe at the time. The groups of Baltic speakers that are called the Lithuanians managed to consolidate a state. So they were consolidating because of pressure from the West. And also, as we'll get to, they consolidated because of what the Mongols did in the south. The Lithuanian state in the early 14th century, in the 1300s, was able to move south from its base around Vilnius into what's now Belarus and deep into what's now Ukraine.
What about the Ruthenians? Well, the Ruthenians want to be part of this great image of a citizen system. This is not a unitary modern state that the Lithuanians establish. The Grand Duchy works, as Słyszewski points out, because it leaves much of the southern Ruthenian lands alone. This is a composite state. Ruthenian law, the Prava Ruskaya, runs there. They're left pretty much to govern themselves. And at every point thereafter, the Ruthenians are involved, and you do get the emergence. Once they are granted rights, but in 1434, not full rights, not political rights in certain offices. The offices that Horodło limits to Lithuanians, or Catholics, it's not Lithuanians, it's Catholics, are the central offices of state. And it's that small Lithuanian clique that begins to run Lithuanian politics. All of them are members of the Horodło 47 families, but only a handful of them, in fact. But in the 16th century, this begins to break down and becomes more problematic because of the Muscovite Wars. Now, most of the Ruthenians, the majority of the Ruthenians, decide that they don't want to be part of the great Muscovite Empire. They far rather have the citizen rights that they have. They are second-class citizens, and the Lithuanian clique that rule made that quite clear when Sigismund the Old nominates Konstantin Ostrowski as Palatine of Trakai in 1522. There's a huge fuss, and Albertus Gostautas stands up and says, what about the Treaty of Horodło? This is illegal. You can't do this. Here are our rights maintained. He's remembering the Treaty of Horodło then. The whole point of the Union of Horodło is to exclude the Ruthenians.
Александр, давайте подсумуем тоді. Литва захопила. Да. Ваш отказ: Литва захопила военной силой и территорию сучасной Беларуси. Так?
В принципе, да. Другое дело, что надо обращать всегда на полутонера популации. Одно дело прийти, допустим, с мечом, который не щадит абсолютно ничего. Вот. Другое дело прийти, например, и надавить на запрещение каких-то определенных условий сосуществования вот, в этой вертикальной системе. Где-то больше, где-то в меньшей степени. Но в любом случае это давление. Если это экспансия, это давление, но давление, которое проявлялось по-разному в различных регионах по отношению к разным сообществам на территории Беларуси. Полоцк, Витебск – это одно давление, может быть, меньшее давление, а если говорить, допустим, о городах Верхнего Приволжья, то, в принципе, я не знаю, мне кажется, что и тем боевикам, которые повладели собой, в принципе, не надо было спрашивать, хотят они иметь эту власть или не хотят. Иное дело, вот какой момент. Это очень важно. Дело в том, что и местное сообщество сами нуждались такой силе, которая могла защищать эти сообщества от внешних врагов и поддерживать внутренний правопорядок. Потому что князь – это в первую очередь воин, потому что его окружает военный контингент. Вот. А общество нуждается в защите. Это главная прерогатива князя. Вторая главная прерогатива – это установление правосудия. Но вот суд, авторитетный судья, выполнять судебную функцию верховный правитель может лишь тогда, когда он обладает, опять же, таким контингентом, который может оказать влияние, в частности, на те же стопорты. Вот. То есть, в любом случае, это человек с мечом. Кстати, меч раньше был символом не внешней агрессии и не защиты, а это символ суда. Ну ладно, это к слову. Дело в том, что Литва имела свои интересы, но белорусские земли также имели свои интересы. Интерес, в первую очередь, в наличии достаточно сильной власти. И такой властью эта Литва и являлась. на территории, вот если мы говорим о Беларуси, о белорусских землях, на территории белорусских земель.
A na pewno nie говорить, что там литовцы сённяшние, то жемайты, że moje dziny i niczego z Wielkim Kняжеством Литовским супольно. А не мають, это выдумка просто кошмарна.
Так кому належить спадщина ВКО?
Нам и литовцам, но залежить какая, что, to była supolna dzierżawa, ale stworzyli jej литовцы, я не сомневаюсь.
Міндоух, Вітовець, Альєрц ми можемо включити і білоруськими князями?
Nie białoruskim, bo Białorusów wtedy nie było. Ja nie by
Тоді нашими, ну що вони колізниці там продками керували.
Tak, no tylko musimy pamiętać, że to byli korенni Litowcy. No. Nie niejakie Białorusy, tylko korенni Litowcy. No to wtedy możemy ich liczyć swoimi kniazami. No nie tylko nam mieli czужych kniaziów, bo 6 dynastii on gdzieś znikała z czужинців, ale absolutnie nie byli ani Białorusami. No, prosta odmawiać litowskość Litowtu, Анхерту чи Міннавута просто несур'йозно. Білоруси не вчив тих литовців і поляків, які змагалися за свої країни, за свій народ, но я лічу, що литовки нічим не слушні, але просто злодійство. Тому я розумію литовців, коли обираються, коли їм крадуть нахабно коренних литовців, коли поляки обираються, що з патріотів поляків робиться білорусам, но гэта, no, dla mnie absolutna bezgwoździca. Ja liczę, że mają dowoli herojów, jakie zmagali się za Białoruś, jak ich uszanować, a гэта nie robić.
It is widespread. It is definitely not a marginal thing. And it is definitely in all socio-economic layers of Belarusian society. You can take radicals like Zanka and Kavaranka, and you can take most prominent Belarusian politicians like Tsepkalo or Paznek. You could take someone like Natalia Radna, or you could take someone like people from Karnataka regiment. It is everywhere. So this was the evidence part. Now let's talk how it all fits into hybrid warfare. I'm going to present information from this source, is publicly available. The issue is that everyone agrees that certain threats are dangerous, that it is hybrid warfare, but no one actually agrees on how to describe them, how to define them, and most importantly, how to counter them. So this is the general picture of all possible hybrid threats. We have state actors, usually authoritarian regimes, who are mortally afraid of democracies. They think we are a threat. And in some cases, they consider us very, puny and weak. And we also have non-state actors, individuals and organizations who do not represent any country per se, but they have enough power and enough influence to make a change. We're talking about Wagner, Hezbollah, and so on. Oh, and by the way, most of non-state actors are usually employed by the state actors. More notable example will be the Light Bulls. This biker group were instrumental in taking Crimea. They were disseminating propaganda. They were painting graffitis. They were terrorizing local politicians and local activists. And they laid the ground for the occupation. At their disposal, they have a variety of tools. These are not the definitive list. There are much, much, much more. But these are the main ones. Starting with some kind of physical operations to GPS jamming, air violations, sanctions, and so on. And all of these are categorized into domains, into spheres in which those actions happen. In total, there is 13. I will take a look at them, a closer look at them momentarily. And all of them are grouped by type of activity, which is also divided by the severity or how hot the activity is. So we start with interference and influence. Those are with the goal so that the target commits to the actions and decisions that are harmful to itself. Generally, it is referred as prime. Then the next step is the stabilization operations. Usually at this stage, the activities become much more hotter, so to speak. A good example would be a riot next to the Seimas in 2021. And the final one is coercion proper, with all kinds of warfare, with little green men, all kinds of clandestine operations at the borders and so on. The ultimate goal is to undermine our capabilities of making decisions, thus making us weak and incapable of resisting possible invasion or possible outside threats. That is the ultimate goal of all of this. So how does Litvinism fit into this picture specifically? So we have both state and non-state actors, starting with Lukashenko, ending with someone like, Paul Kalinowski, Radna, and so on, or Budzma. Definitely Budzma is over there. Belsat is definitely over there. We have plenty of actors. They are all committing all these tools. I will talk about the purple line in a moment. They all correspond to the certain domains, and they neatly fit into priming operation. Seeing everything else, the balloon attacks, the espionage, and so on, it is very clear what we are primed for. The purple line is about operations on infrastructure. It's not entirely clear how to classify these. It is evident that it was done by, it's most likely have been done by security services or Minsk or Moscow regimes in order to incite, strife between Belarusians and Lithuanians. We also most definitely have influence and operations, opportunistic ones, by the way, by those regimes and their security services. This is a very concrete example. Armed men who are spreading Litvinist narratives and threatening Lithuanians and Lithuania simultaneously. Those are minor cases. The rest of the cases are simply Belarusian being misled by Russian disinformation. It's very, very, very simple. Let's not try to whitewash everything that opposition has done and try to, sort of anchor all the blame on these guys. They are just using the situation that was made by Belarusians. So about those domains, there are 13 in total. There's a little bit too much. So whenever we speak about it, we usually condense them into 5 elements: cyber operations, political, informational, military, and economics. The recruitment of Belarusians are in a few places because recruitment can happen in many different ways. It can be a bribery, it can be some kind of blackmail, it can be ideological. There are the ways vary. Great. The red lines are related to Litvinism directly or remotely. I will talk about them in a bit. Here is the informational domain, the most important in Litvinism. And green lines represents legal domain. And with hybrid threats, the legal is one of the most important issues, because it is difficult to attribute to who is the actual perpetrator, who has actually done it, how to respond, what law to apply, what institutions should enforce that law. There's a lot of, obscurity and then clarity, let's call it like that. Now let's go over those red lights. So let's start with the political one. Belarusian citizens moving back and forth between Minsk. You can go to Minsk, get your orders from the security services, come back to Vilnius and, paint graffitis or whatever. It can definitely be that. Do you remember that guy that I've shown you, that incident with Antonitis? Could possibly be that he was from the security services and he was actually making a provocation. It might have been that he was just a box-standard Belarusian who was drunk and, a bit high on nationalism. But it is equally probable it was a security specialist. We have passports. I do understand that maybe the intent wasn't malicious, but when you see everything else that is happening, when you remember what happened in Donbass, when they occupied the territory and very shortly after they decided to release their own passports, then you think like, what the hell is going on? Guys, what are you doing? And then half a year later, after declaring that they are releasing the passports, Tsikhanouski says, you know what, we need some kind of islands of Belarusians, autonomous ones, like, what the hell? I am very dissatisfied with the Lithuanians and Belarusians engaging in some kind of dialogue in certain groups on Facebook, Telegram, TikTok, and so on. Most of those actors are, well, let's call them bad actors or simply trolls. They are people who are paid to provoke you, to incite strife between Belarusians and Lithuanians. Nothing good can come out of it. They usually use all kinds of, well, bullshit sources. They try to manipulate you. I don't approve of it. As the security specialists and reserve officers have stated, those narratives usually are coordinated with the military exercises. And this is one of the most important points of my presentation. Once again, what the hell is this? Especially when you know everything that is happening in the context. These guys, they call themselves Litvin. Of course, come on, they have nothing to do with Litvinism. How could you think that? So I'd have presented a public letter to various Belarusian organizations, and I have addressed them. And they were unable to denounce certain narratives and condemn certain individuals. And by the way, the Lithuanian Rifleman Union discontinued their cooperation with this organization because of those inistic narratives. So I want those guys, if anything happens, as far as possible from Lithuania. They think they are preparing for something. They are not. They are not. I want them as far as possible. So this is how our domains look. The other important issue is that it can have a cascading effect. Something small can have detrimental consequences along the way. So this was very posh and schematic. Could you explain the threat in simple language? Sure. Has Samojusha ever been a country? No. That means Vilnius and Klaipėda cannot belong to Samojusha, right? Sure it cannot. That means Stalin gave it away, so Vilnius has to go back to Lukashenko, when Klaipėda has to go back to Prussia. That is these days Kaliningrad, occupied by Russia. And in total, we Lithuanians are just a bunch of wankers who have never achieved anything, who didn't have writing, who had never created anything, when they stole Belarusian identity, and we are getting the right and just retribution for our sins. And it is Lithuanians who should, integrate in Vilnius, learn Belarusian and Russian, which is a very popular narrative, not the other way around. Yes, military exercises, self-explanatory. And the other bottom line of my presentation is how Belarusian diaspora will act in the case of the invasion. You are telling me that people who have been hammered with those narratives since the school days will take up arms or commit some kind of civic resistance against their own compatriots who, armed, are coming to take back their Mecca of Kriviks, their Jerusalem, their Vilna. I am not that naive. There might be good Belarusians, and we have a living case sitting next to us, but if we're talking not in absolutes, but in generals, I think to presume that Belarusians will somehow resist it is foolish. I want to deconstruct certain false narratives that personally, Belarusians might believe. This is not GDL. This is Russian disinformation about GDL. It is a very, very big difference. Of course it can. We all know that the true Rus is Ukraine and Belarus. So we all know that people of Kaliningrad, they are not natives. They are someone who colonized territory. We can give as an example the Belarus itself. People who don't know their identity in true form. Most of them think that their identity have been stolen by Lithuanians. I'm not provoking Belarusians. What I am doing is self-defense. Let's not confuse the consequence, the action, with the effect. It is Belarusians who are spreading disinformation and propaganda, and it is Lithuanians who are countering and dismantling it. How can we focus, or how can we unite with people who deny our history of state, our identity, who echo Russia's disinformation narratives? If I am playing Russian games, then in that logic, Ukrainians are also playing Russia's imposed games. The only difference is that I bury this in informational war. No, I do not want to humiliate the Belarusians. Unfortunately, Belarusians, in many cases, have done it themselves. I want Belarusians to start constructing an identity that is strong, authentic, and not based on Russia's disinformation. And if Belarusians do not like that, it is not their ancestors who founded the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. And if they do not like that their ancestors were forcibly incorporated into that state, well, it is definitely not the Lithuanian project. Closing remarks, and then we'll go to discussion. Belarusian national revival has been misled and instrumentalized in Russia's hybrid war against the West, in particular Lithuania. Russia is very much succeeding in its goal of sowing discord between Belarusians and their potential allies. The history of Grand Duchy of Lithuania cannot suffice the needs of Belarusian national revival unless Belarusians are relying on Russia's disinformation. And if Belarusians do not lie, this is a very interesting and important conundrum. If Belarusians do not lie, then what kind of story do you tell yourself? With a bahona and so on, of a second-class citizens who have been conquered by far fewer Baltic Lithuanians? So of course, I'm putting a very dark shade on this, but in general, this is it. As I have mentioned before, I have addressed Belarusian organizations and asking them to reaffirm certain statements that are foundational of the history of Lithuanian statehood and Lithuanian identity, and denounce certain individuals. I provided them evidence, I provided them communicational guides, and I got zero response. Well, I had some response, that's a fact, but there are none who actually did that. Why? Because they believe that shit. Because that shit is integral part of their identity. If Belarusians want to find a great and powerful Belarus in the past, unfortunately, most likely there isn't one. But there might be one in the future. Thank you for your time and for your attention. Let's go to discussion. Right, do you have any questions? Or maybe part of you would like to moderate.
Yes, I can start. I have Josh. So we also received this email from you as a talk, and I reached out to you because I found that it's kept very interesting. And after discussion, you made me change because I'm a technical health person. I'm not a historian, but humanitarian originally. So you actually made you changed my point on certain topics. But coming back to it, your pahone, right? It's kind of pinnable. Nation state what foreign kind of. So some people also, because I was preparing this question, and some people told me, what would they write in the headlines if they ask it? But I will ask anyways. So what do you suggest in terms of Bahonia? Like, we can ask for advice. It's great asking for advice. Any advice is a bit bad. So what would you suggest then? Today, when we have Lukashenko with this Soviet cars, and there is a...
Actually, do you have a slide on? I just need a moment to prepare it. Back at the beginning of last year, I actually gathered a lot of respectable people who signed a petition to prohibit Belarusians from using the order, not because just we don't want to share, but because Belarusians disseminate that disinformation. And in that petition, we also added a possible alternatives to Bahari. Some of them are very plausible, some of them are less plausible. It's definitely up for debate. And I don't think that Belarusians should use some of the symbols of the beginning, from the beginning of the 20th century. I'm talking about the one from the first charter of Belarusian democratic state. It's the that box of hay with a rake and something else. And I don't think they should be using the one that was made by Nazi Germany with the flower. There are plenty of symbols from the Lithuanian principalities way before Lithuanians came in and incorporated them into their state. Starting with Polotsk, something from the, White Rus, Izyaslav, maybe Turov. There's also others. Unfortunately, this site is in Lithuanian, but definitely I can, translate it and provide the sources where I got these from. So this is just a very small research done by me and fellow compatriots, let's call it that. But there are many, many, many more, because modern Belarus consisted of Polotsk, Vitebsk, Volhynia. There was also Novodvorok Principality, short-lived. Turov, Pinsk, maybe part of Chernigov, maybe part of Smolensk. There's definitely enough heritage to make a very rich and colorful history.
And is it time for this now? Like, is it possible, it's feasible to start talking about this now, initiate about discussions?
This is the best time, because I want to point this out. When the aggression against Ukraine back in 2022 started, it wasn't only the invasion, it was also invasion to Ukraine's history. And there was colossal amount of disinformation, and then Timothy Snyder came to make his lectures online defending Ukraine's history. When that happens in Lithuania, and most likely that could happen, the invasion, it wouldn't be only fighting in the forests and in the ground. We will also be fighting in the informational domain for our history. They will definitely come after our history, pretending that Lithuania was some kind of Rus, and we are just some magicians or some kind of Lietuvisa or whatever. And when Lithuanians historians will raise their swords and ask Belarusians to help them, what will Belarusians do? Because we will ask Belarusians to do the exact opposite what they have been doing for years. We will ask them to go against that whole Novodvorok is the first capital bullshit. We'll ask them to go against voluntary union of equals. We'll ask them to go against all that Ruthenian culture and Viking was vitally important, while completely ignoring the Latin influence. This is the best time, because when the war starts, it will be too late.
So before invasion?
Yes, before the invasion. Now it is the best time. Okay. Because when the invasion starts, it will be a little bit too late, and Belarusians will be in a very, very big predicament.
Yeah, because to me it looks like maybe the invasion starts and this starts to roll. If it starts to roll, both sides start to play against, the Ukrainians, and some Belarusian people start kind of, supporting, let's say, the Russian army. Maybe then they would try to differentiate, those who don't want to stay away of this problematic Paholia, and maybe go off with something else. But it's just a thought.
But I can give another example for Paul Kalnas. Those people, they are fighting a good cause, a just cause, under the symbol of Paholia, with chase, that they are absolutely misled. And imagine what will happen to the soldier's psyche when the wave of information will come on you, crushing everything that you believe, everything that you hold dear and near to your identity. That everything that you, and especially when it will be sort of, unmasked as Russian disinformation narratives. The narratives of the enemy you have been fighting for a very, very long time. There is some tragedy in that, definitely.
Петр, запытайся, так что нам робить, болторусам?
And because, like, to my perspective, like, this is the symbol that unites this anti-Lukashenko, or just those measure movement, right? So at this point in time, it's very hard to even talk about alternative. People cannot come up with alternative. It is just not possible at this moment. There's not enough momentum to just even start talking about this in this critical moment, in this crisis that Belarus is coming through in the last couple of thousands of years.
Within the context of Belarusian opposition, uprisings, called the past, yes, I definitely agree. But if we zoom out and we look not only within Belarus and Belarusian diaspora, but we look in the whole geopolitical spectrum, then the question becomes, is Belarusian opposition actually anti-Russian? Because you may be united by anti-Lukashenko narratives, but you're definitely not united by anti-Russian narratives. And that whole Pahonet issue, well, it is an embodiment of Russian disinformation doing wonders on Belarusian diaspora. We can definitely share. There are a lot of nations and a lot of countries that share symbols, but it cannot be shared on the basis of bullshit. You cannot lie. You cannot lie. This is the bottom ground, the bottom line. You cannot lie. And if you do not lie, as I've said, what are you doing with that symbol? To reinstate maybe some of the participants don't know, Pahonet is a symbol of a ruling dynasty, or Gedimine dynasty. Symbolizes a ruler that can defend the nation and enact justice, as Russia said. And the dynasty is very, very, very clearly Lithuanian, the main branch. Of course, first marriage of Algirdas and his first children, they are of Ruthenian culture and they are Pravoslav Orthodox, and they very heavily involved in Ruthenian businesses, let's call it that. But the main line, Vytautas, Algirdas, Kęstutis, so on, who are in positions of power, who rule the state, they are definitely Lithuanians in all parameters you could think of. But that being said, there are, as Lectronic said, I didn't elaborate on that on Lectronic because we have made an hour-long video. There are the Belarusian heroes, definitely. There are the Belarusian heroes. Even in medieval times, you can romanticize Rostislaviches, you can romanticize Yaroslav. There are people you can build an identity and a myth on.
Any questions, any comments? No time? Because I'm the only person here who is discussing. No, because people were afraid.
No, usually that happens when people see my presentations, and this is a live version. It's a live version. Usually everyone slammed a little bit because they never thought that it is at this magnitude and at this scale. And they never thought that it is so well instrumentalized and fits so well to the hybrid warfare. When they recognize the danger and the scale, they're like a bit...
No, because also we discussed regarding the Pahonet symbol that the first... and also you mentioned in the text, you mentioned a lot the Western authors, which are not original sources, though. And in the same, and you mentioned them. I mean, it's kind of working in Lithuania, but going into kind of more like broader debate or scientific debate, discussed about this first original Pahonet. That it was generally the natal forest is a very kind of general symbol. Many groups and people used for different purposes, and there is this legendary source that claims that Pahonet was mentioned first in attributed to some Nematos who supposedly was
Became a duke, that role in Baltic.
in Polsk, yeah. So this is one thing, I guess. And then also the fact that the nations, the nations they didn't exist there, but at the same time, Lithuania provided what also some people in the video talk of said. It provided military protection. It's not just the rulers. It's they also provide, because this is why we have a state in the first place, protect us, right? So you give, and I mean, every nation kind of wants to have their heroes, but often the heroes are those who oppress others, who went to conquer other parts of the world. In many countries, even in all countries, those people who went to also kill other people becoming heroes. Now, we maybe change this a bit, and in today's world, we don't consider people who kill others as heroes, right? Maybe they will be considered heroes of time years. So, and if in Belarus you don't have many like people, right? So there is more. So embedding into the kind of world of countries, Belarus do not have those people, right? Is good or bad? Because you're saying that it's definitely from the pragmatic point of view, it's very bad because everyone wants to feel great and everyone wants to feel pride. And while many people feel pride from being big and being able to conquer other countries, some make the other also sources for pride. That is just my comments. Nothing that maybe
I'd want to unpack that because this is one of those issues that our positions completely diverge. So when it comes to Pohonia, not every knight on a horse is a Pohonia. The definition of Pohonia is very clear and is very closely related to Lithuania. What Anas Triceps is trying to spread is absolute misinformation. Because he says that basically Anas Triceps is one of the people that I mentioned in my petitions and my letters as the most renowned promoters of the ideology of Litvinism. He says that Pohonia originates from Mesopotamia, and that everybody used this kind of symbol, and screw you Lithuanians for thinking that you are somehow special. So that's absolutely very true. When it comes to nations, not in a modern sense, but Lithuanians are a little bit of a special case, because in a sea of Slavs, we definitely had our own identity. We were pagans, we had our own language, we had our own names. We fought everyone tooth and nail, including Germans and Ruthenians and Poles and even Scandinavians. If we treat Gronians as part of Lithuanian ethnos. When it comes to Narimantas, so it is a semi-legendary issue. The depictions that we have, they are not reliable. The reliable sources that actually agreed by wide group of historians I have provided with those, and they usually start with Albertas. And if we go into the myths and legends, then you have Narimantas from Polska, and I have Mindaugas, who is almost 200 years earlier before Narimantas. So, I mean, it's a foolish game. The one that the Parisians wouldn't win anyways. When it comes to, people oppressing other people, so we cannot apply modern-day morals to those days. Definitely, if we had some kind of Grindu who absolutely slayed everyone and just applied burned earth tactics everywhere needlessly, then yeah, maybe. But I don't think that's the case. Trizinga.
Okay, shall I speak in English or? English. So my comment about to make how we perceive us as national village. I think that it's basically it depends on whether a person has added something for the survival of a nation and its prosperity, let's say, or not. When we take, let's say, Vytautas or Litvinas or Kęstutis, we can see that they really added something for the survival of the Lithuanian nation. Maybe it's especially when it comes to Vytautas, what did Vytautas did? He broke a Teutonic order, he depends on Magiki. That's all. That's why he is a national hero of the faith. What did Vytautas did for Belarusia, for the survival or prosperity of Belarusian nation as a Belarusian nation? I don't see anything. Sorry, guys, I don't see anything. How Vytautas did something good for Belarus. Maybe for Ukraine, something. There's some Black Sea, a piece of Black Sea coast, right? Maybe it's for someone else, but specifically for Belarus and Belarus. We'll see.
And they want to add on that.
That's a criteria we can use in every specific case.
Yeah. And they want to add on that, Lithuanians coming to protect local Belarusian communities. What Russia meant was that Lithuanians came in mafia style and said, this is going to be Lithuania now, Lithuanian rules, and you're going to yield. And you will have your rights, you will have your laws, we will not interfere too much. But it definitely wasn't like, a nice, hey guys, you would like some security services? Yeah. And nothing on that kind.
Yeah. Well, people ask a bit. No, even in a stupid people, even in a normal stage, can behave aggressively or will start fighting. This can happen even without any things like this. And also there was no, of course, Belarusians at that point.
Well, it depends on whom you ask. For example, I do not agree with Lajisholo. I believe that there were Belarusians because Polish Principality exuded great sovereignty in the whole Kiev and Rus realm. Turov, Pinsk, they were very important cultural centers. Volhynia was warring with Lithuania and God knows everyone else for a very long time. It was largely based on what is now Western Belarus and Northern.
Well, it is Ukraine.
Yeah, but it is Ukraine. The core land is definitely Ukraine. So it is another part of heritage that is problematic if we want to base that. Please.
So I would want to specify as a historian, and name is Ida Baranowskaya, for those who don't know. Okay? So when we speak of the first Lithuanian Ruthenian annexes, like Novogrudek in the south and Polskin in the northeast, right? So first of all, what we should understand, when there was a clash around Novogrudek, it was a clash between Lithuania on one side and Galicia, Volhynia on the other side. So when we speak of the Lithuanian protected Novogrudek from someone, our Ukrainian neighbors, right? And that we exactly the same. When we speak about the annexation of Polotsk and Vitebsk, it's the one municipality because Vitebsk was often the part, an integral part of Polotsk. It was radical Polotsk municipality. So exactly the same, not exactly the same, but in a very similar way, Lithuanians pushed out other rivals who were the first of all, the smallest principality, Smolensk, Dukes of Smolensk, Rostislav, if you know that, and also partly Great Novgorod and the dynasty who ruled there. So we had, in the Polsk, we had this like three rivals around Polsk. Great Novgorod till Smolensk was probably the strongest for a period of time, and Lithuania came in, pushing out the parallel small. So, and very similar things happened later in other these Ruthenian principalities. It's often some misconception that the Ukrainian pushed out the influence of Golden Horde and Mongols and Tatars. Not exactly, they did. Primarily, the Lithuanians were pushing out some other Ruthenian bribe. Yes, because, well, Kiev and Rus and later, it was a very complicated conglomerate of warring fractions, and dukes went from one fraction to up, and this was also very mixed and complicated, and this is how it was created for window of opportunities for Lithuanians to get in and establish this influence.
Basically, it is a mafia style, if you want to, some kind of example for modern days.
Well, not exactly. I don't like it because mafia is a very specific organization first of all, it's a more state organization.
Yeah, but you know,
But in general, you can see it like more like a business companies, yes.
but takeover, this is hostile takeover. Right?
But in general, everyone did that exactly the same way and still doing it exactly the same way.
Yep.
You want it?
Please, Dylan, first one.
So I have a question. In which sense Belarusian can share the identity of Grand Duchy Lithuania? Of course, it was Lithuanians, but still it was part of that country. And with reception the army, the local nobility fight. So I'm interested, in which sense would they can share that?
Not in many, to be short.
Yeah.
Firstly, most of them were incorporated in one way or another against their will. Secondly, if they had the choice, they definitely would have not integrated into Lithuania. The supposed argument of their very important culture, it's a little bit weak because firstly, the writing tradition came from Volhynia, from Ukraine, and most scribes were actually Ukrainians, and that the language, the Chancery Slavonic of the early ages, it had more of a Ukrainian attribute, and only in third started to something of a Belarusian kind of it. So that's one thing. What I remembered is Edvardas Gudavičius, who in his, I don't remember which book, but basically he stated that when Lithuanians annexed parts, they very quickly inherited certain administrational methods. Bolshus and other terms, they come from the Ruthenian principalities. So there's, some contribution there. Now, the soldiers, the Ruthenians definitely fought alongside Lithuanians. For example, the Battle of Drungal, Žalgiris, and so on. In many chronicles of Ruthenians, Belarusians, are described as archers. The Ruthenians were melee units and crossbowmen, and the Ruthenians were archers. But, Lithuanians were also, part of Tsarist Russian military, Soviet or Russian military. I mean, do we really? We can definitely recognize it. Now about showing the pohoda. Let's come back there. In Poland, where Lithuania used to be, like Lithuania proper, the Pinskas, Punskas, Subalkai, Białegostokie, those regions, they have Vitas, the chaste, in their municipality symbols. Belarusians can definitely do the same. They can have their own national symbols of statehood, and they can have municipality symbols of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. Why not? What else have they done? They were very important economically. That cannot be understated. Polotsk, Vitebsk, they were economical powerhouses, and these regions were one of the main reasons why Lithuanians were able to resist crusaders on the other side of the Grand Duchy. And all that, Kaunas was also very important. Biržai was very important. Šiauliai was very important. Ruthenian culture is very important, but Latin, Latin was overwhelmingly, okay, let's be very fair. Let's be nice. It was equally important because Lithuanians, they pretended to be Romans. They communicated within themselves. Yeah, for the they communicated within the families communicated within themselves in Latin. The language of Vilnius University is Latin. If you are the Ruthenian and you want to become part of that ruling clique, you have to make 5 things. First, marrying to a Lithuanian family. Secondly, have some kind of myth pretending to be Lithuanian. Either Kotebchi. They came from some magician warlords, Barikas, supposedly. Sabieras. They came from Sapius, Roman noblemen. And they all married into Lithuanian families. They had to buy land in Lithuania. They had to be very exceptionally in their service for the statehood and for the Grand Duke. And then we asked ourselves, what's Belarusian about them at the end? Sure, the very first Sapiras and the very first Hotkas, they definitely were Ruthenians, and you can try to project Belarusian identity onto them. But their sons and grandsons, they were definitely Lithuanians. So it's a difficult question, but short answer that much.
Петр, запитайся, як ми можемо Дамінікасу допомогти? Що він хоче від нас?
How can we help? Why, for example, we hospice them. They come here and they discuss in this group. These are journalists and just bureaucrats from
Make percentages on military group.
Yeah, they try to, but they're not. Unfortunately, they're just people who learn how to do sort of first aid, but yeah, like, how can we help?
Right, so the blueprint is very clear. My letter to organizations. Look, make a public proclamation. Okay, dear Lithuanians, we confirm these following statements. Yes, we denounce these perpetrators of this propaganda. List of names. You encourage the club Litvinism, Sergei, to come forward and do, well, what I asked in the letter. It's not a demand. It's like an encouragement that I asked. If you do not, address this problem straightforwardly, it will not work.
Do you think it will strengthen Lukashenko?
The whole, it will weaken Lukashenko. It will definitely weaken. The stronger the Belarusian identity is in the exile, the weaker Lukashenko's regime.
Yes, but still, like, the military is 8.5 million people, and they want still to feel pride, and Lukashenko is giving them
the false pride.
Yeah, the false pride. And then, would they be more leading towards what Lukashenko says, rather than someone who actually needs to build everything up from the ground? And it's also very, as Belarus doesn't have the name also, although we know about the disintegration about Lithuania. It was the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, was called Lithuania, but also the region within the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, the central region, Vilnius and around, that was 50-50, let's say, Belarusian and current modern-day Belarus. Yeah, there were different discussions, but
it's not really...
Yeah, well, suppose. Okay, narrative is this is history, and there are different maps. I saw like 5 different maps. They was all different. But let's say there was Lithuania that was this region within the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, right? And that and the whole. So this is also a disintegration, and then this plays also towards for what they're saying, because not everyone understands this, and not everyone makes this.
It's not easy, but it is simple. You will have to start from the ground. It is not easy, but it is that simple.
And fundamental thing that you have to develop some sort of Belarusian identity in the historical map. It doesn't have to be grand, but for now, this reason idea is that let's turn Belarusians into Lithuanians, or let's turn them into Russians. The fact is that people are not connecting to this Litvinistic idea. You can see although really many who are repeating it and parroting it also, there's no real connection.
And you just have to be truthful.
Yeah,
you don't have to be grand, you just have to be truthful. Any kind of truthful identity will be much better than anything Lukashenko, Dugin, or whatever else says.
Yes, you are falling into this trap that on one hand it's meant to be grand, and grandest country, you have in your neighborhood, it's lost.
Finland isn't grand, Estonia isn't grand, Latvia isn't grand, you're fine.
Don't forget about geographical lack, which is the main determinant of national success. It's where you have your land. You have land, we have free electricity, free water, free beans. It's far different from being, for Belarus with no free energy source, for example, or access to the sea. So, and this is also what many users don't have in their minds. People who knows what is geographical lack.
Well, it's a problem that people are often...
No one knows what's the geographical lack, although this is the main determinant of national success. So, and those are things that are playing on the side of what Damínікас is saying. Although it's actually very hard to argue, because you have to explain those details. It's more difficult. It's more easy to play for Damínікас. It's much harder to play for Belarus. Yeah. It's very hard to explain more complex phenomenon. It's very easy to just... This is the guy who conquered, who made things. Very easy to understand.
Absolutely. I don't agree with the geographical part, but I agree with the art at this point.
The idea of this someone who just conquered something and made something big, this is a very Russian idea, not a Lithuanian idea. But if you did Lithuanian narratives about, for instance, Vytautas, with classical language, it's not about that Vytautas conquered all the lands with legacy. It's about the Bildungs defenders and Logiti. And ended this bloody, horrific war that was lasting for 2.5 centuries. It's not like he is a brand guy because he got something. It's brand guy because he defended something.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that absolutely, to play as Lithuanian is much easier than as Belarusian. But you have to understand that what Belarusians are doing now, you are losing. The direction you have taken, there is no winning it. Absolutely none.
So again, so what your best plug is inside. Also, the naming convention is also on your side because this is what people don't discuss. Don't you all go deep into it? We got Lithuania, Lithuania, and be fun. Oh.
We were always Lithuanian with market. There was no discussion about it.
You know what I mean? It was the Grand Duchy of Lithuania was called, I guess they said, it's what was there? Rus.
Yeah, we saw a full only 15 names.
Because basically, so it was essential in the main part of Grand Duchy of Lithuania, right?
But we could why it also the main and central part.
Was it originated there?
Yes, because we are the Lithuania were the country and the people who expanded it. So that's the point. And to ignore the very beginnings and then come to the middle and say, oh, it was a multi-ethnic state, we should share everything equally. That's
well, there's a lot of people they are playing, just they're trying to build something from what they have. I mean,
you have much more. You are ignoring a lot of what you have, and you're just looking at that. And this is a Russian disinformation narrative.
Any suggestions apart from those symbols? Symbols are great. It's definitely...
I have a...
Polsk, Kuturov, Vitebsk, Volhynia, Chernihiv, and Prague, and so on. There's plenty of. Iziaslav, Rostislavich, and Rurikids, others from the white Ruthenia lands.
I have a few. And all Belarus people. So what do you think? Lithuanians are Slavs or Balts?
Yeah. It's a question like, I think it's also...
It's a very simple question that has only one answer.
It's like this question in the application where they ask you which Crimea is. I think there should be a culture, at least in Vilnius, there should be a culture of, the sanctuary city, where you don't come to a person, and of course I can answer about it, it's easy idea, but it's rude, right, to ask this question. Everybody, it's rude, it's maybe not rude in the application for the residence permit, but to ask people like this, it's just a communication, because...
it's nice.
It's obvious that it's bound up. Who is saying otherwise?
The only thing Mumbai is an English city. Yeah, sure, but Russian, somebody mentioned English about living.
I want to explain. Look, my ancestors, my father is Belarusian, and I have a lot of cousins. I have a lot of Belarusian cousins. And they're really great people. We always got along together very well. But recently we started talking about the history, and they started talking about this Litvinism. At first it was very funny for me. I thought, what are they talking about? And I just asked question by question. And you know what? At first they said, Lithuanians are Slavs, 100% Slav. They sent me a lot of different links, texts to prove why Lithuanians and Slavs. But then, when we discussed later, they said, no, Lithuanians are actually mixed Slavs and Balts. And finally they said, no, Lithuanians are Balts, but Belarus are Balts too. It's...
The Russian narrative that I presented at the end of the video, the Dugin one. The only leap that they need to make, and they are making that leap whenever they are investigating those narratives, is that white Russians, Russians of Baltic origin, then everything clicks into place. Mindaugas is a Balt, Vytautas is Balt, and Belarusian Balt.
No, it is proven by historic and also especially this Krivichi, right?
Krivichi is Rochi
Rostislavich. It's a mix, so there was some session of Balts.
Yeah, it was 400 years before ages.
As Balts today in Vilnius, if you check the DNA of this Balts, today we don't Balts.
No. We're talking about 12th, 13th century, very clearly, about what happened in this region. when the Grand Duchy began its expansion to Ruthenian land, you were long gone north walls, Yugoslavia, all kinds of ways.
Ruthenian doesn't mean Slavic, although the center was in Kiev.
Why not? You mean Ruthenia, it's what, wifing?
No, it's for the political center in Kiev, right? But those regions that
Everything was taken for the group. You get
yeah, but Ruthenia, the people were not part of Ruthenia.
They want. Nadsha was tributary land to Polsk at some point.
Nadsha?
Yeah, I think. But, no. So if you
Well, if you what we discussed like in the 20th, it's in the 12th century, something like, and 11, probably the whole Lithuania was the tributary of Kiev and Rus, and probably Polsk was the closest center from which distribute land.
Yeah, but
no, I'm not going to change. So let's go back about this Baltic tribes. So people were living in tribes. Each tribe was characterized by a specific genetic mark, right?
Cultural. So not genetic.
No. We're talking about cultural or genetic. Okay, another discussion, right?
Because genetics are not relevant in this discussion that we are having about this information.
But I want to add some.
Well, also in terms of culture, there are many, and I was a bit preparing, and I was looking for historic, and they were excavating, how people are buried, and they're talking about it's very, very similar. So even culturally, those people who lived in those regions, they were very similar, and they had mixed origin. Originating in that time of emergence of the government.
No, they didn't have mixed origin. We had similar religion, but it was from the Baltic times in the 5th, 4th century or something like that. And when it comes to burial, I don't know what you're talking exactly, because Lithuanians burned the dead, and you were Christian, you cannot burn anything.
Look, actually, Balts were not only around like at the borders of today's Lithuania. Balts lived they deeper into Belarus.
And up to Kiev, yeah.
Yeah, and they, of course, you can have Baltic roots. You can even have Lithuanian roots. So if you look into your, genealogy, and we say, okay, my great grandma had Lithuanian last name, and you can know the meaning. It's so cool. So yeah, you can. There are a lot of Baltic Lithuanian people or Belarusian with Lithuanian roots. Yeah, but then you should be talking about Lithuania like this country, language, culture, and not about that Lithuanians are Slavs, because you have to. At first, you have to understand what is Lithuania. What is in a language? Yeah, and
I think I'm abroad. Of course, if they said this Lithuanians are Slav, this is simply.
As I said, we can have a mixed. We can have mixed heritage and genetics and so on. That's natural, but it is more about political and cultural group that you belong. And Lithuanians were one group, and Lithuanians were the other, and from that group comes Belarusians, and that becomes Lithuanians who conquered that group.
You say political decisions is what, when we talk about nations or even tribes, we are talking about political entities. And political decisions of every individual person, they are not defined by some genes in our blood cells. They are defined by our culture, right? So, and culture is built, basically around language, religion, and all those narratives that come with it.
Yeah, but we also know that the center of the Rus was in Kiev, and regions that were on the north, the Polsk Principality, had quite a lot of autonomy. And Damінікас, and for example, he only talks about, he says that those who are there, they have the Rus culture and Slavic culture equals, and those who on the Lithuanian side have a Baltic culture and Pасьля. But this is just it's a simplification because those people who live in Belarus, they have a mixed culture. This is
later. It was later.
Well, the ones made.
Later than what? Than where?
Yeah.
the 5th century or something.
Yeah, because at first, when you look into the history, at first people lived within tribes, right? And then when Grandage of Lithuania was being established at the very beginning, there was no so big mix or so.
No longer, you were very, very distinct.
Yeah,
very here people.
Balts were pagans, Slavs were.
They are Kurdish. They are Slavs, or they are Slavs, or
they are Slavs, Orthodox Slavs.
Look, so I will explain you very simple. Like, for example, let's take first Vladimir Saint Vladimir the Baptizer of Russia. For Kiev, he is our hero, right? For Poland specifically, but tell me, as a Belarusian, what is your attitude to Vladimir?
I don't even know who that is.
But you are Orthodox, right?
I'm baptized Orthodox.
Yeah. So it's probably it's important, but Volodymyr baptized us and made you all Christians and saved all your souls and the souls of your ancestors. But maybe it's not that good that he retrospected the princess of.
We call it
So it's you can say, but for Kiev, for Ukraine, Vladimir is good 100%. For Polotsk is controversial, and for Lithuania we don't care. Not our history.
I was ever heard it.
Because I think what you guys are denying is that Belarus has a mixed culture that cannot be labeled as Slavic.
Now you already assimilated.
It has this culture. So it's a mixed culture. It was a mixed culture, and it is the reason why it became an independent state. Because it is a mixed culture.
If it was also, let's put it on a timer. Let's put it on a timer that will clarify it. Look, 2026, then let's say 1300s, and then 800s, right? Fine, 800s, and before that, Baltic. No question there, more or less. Between 800s and between 1300s, you can talk about, not maybe a bit less, maybe 1100s. You can talk about some kind of gray period where you're transitioning from Balts to Slavs. Sure. But from 11th century on or 12th century on, you are most definitely not Balts in any kind of way.
What kind of Baltic elements do you see preserved in the current Belarusian culture?
I can say. Yep. Okay. Let's start with the national celebrations. So we have the same national celebrations that looks. Maybe in Belarus there is no burning of bonfires, but the calling for spring or the midsummer celebration or other. So there's
summer is around Europe.
No, but they have different features.
But okay.
Okay, they will say Strasbourg.
Yeah, so Latvia is celebrating with some.
No, it's just in terms of what relevance on
the party. What differences when we come to Solvay? The honoring of the dead ancestors. In Lithuania, it's and you have them only in Western Belarus. Everything east from Minsk celebrates Radonitsa, which is in spring, and then goes to drink vodka on the graves of their ancestors on the east.
Yeah, okay.
So that's the difference between Slavic and tradition.
Oh, it's a mix. Some people do, some listen. But
it's a mix. Look at the whole Belarus and look at that spot that actually has that Baltic heritage. It's a very tiny one, and it is because, well, I'm being a little bit of a colleague here, but it is because Lithuania didn't get those territories after being annexed and incorporated from the Soviet Union, because in 1920, when we actually fought Poland and we had a treaty with Soviet Union, Lida, Gardnas, Kreva, and so on, a big part of North and Western Belarus, it's considered Lithuania because a lot of
And you claim...
No, it was an ethnographic Lithuania throughout the ages.
So, but why did you bring it this time?
Because it is the part you are referring as Baltic.
How it is relevant to our discussion?
Because there's a very small part that was actually Lithuania, not Belarus.
That's a very simple question. Do you have a day off on this, a 3-day holiday?
No.
No, you don't carry. So you imagine Lukashenko is out, everyone is free, and you are sitting in the Belarusian
Those, maybe.
Yeah, you are sitting in the Belarusian parliament, and you have to make a decision which day will be a day off of a holiday to honor the dead. Will it be on November 1st or 2nd? Or it will be in spring, I don't know, it depends from phase.
Yeah.
So you have to choose between those 2 days.
Yeah.
Which you choose?
Well, me?
Yes.
Yeah, I like the day, because...
You like the day. And what about the rest of your compatriots?
Well, this is the question for campaigners. Who this is future. I'm optimist, I'm always using the positive.
You are evading a question, that's
No, this is just, it all depends on your efforts. It all depends on the campaigning. It all depends on the public education.
But you see, the person, your compatriots who used to go to honor the dead on the Easter, on Paradulisa, they will be highly upset that some Western Belarusians from the Ruta are forcing about the robbing them of their ancient tradition to celebrate Radulitsa and forcing them to celebrate city.
Maybe some Lithuanians were dissatisfied with the standardized Lithuanian language, throwing out many words. Also, but they accepted it and it played well, right? So it takes effort, to pursue it.
Because of the effort, that's the question. Is it worth the effort, and who will be the dominant group? Those who want to celebrate Radulitsa or those who want to celebrate Getty?
Well, as we have the great example, the Grand Lithuania, that is it.
The point is that the part that was Baltic in Belarus, they already Slavinized.
In terms of culture.
In terms of culture and mentality, and because look, when I talk to a person who fought me, he said, Lithuania is Slavs, definitely Slavs. I can prove it, la. And he said, you know what? And he said, Lithuania, right? Current Lithuania is just Samogishia, so Yojmods, etc. And then he says. And
extremes.
It's not extremes. Actually, that's what
these people face this.
Litvinism is part of that whole story. It is used by Velsad, it is used by Yauzma, it is used by Znak, even Natalia
Kollega. Of course, you can name those people that are using those extremes for the sake of building the national identity. But also, on the other hand, there are people like Damінікас who are completely denying that Belarus is a mix of culture. It's a unique culture that grounds.
Well, when did that mix happen? The action of mix.
It was happening in the Grand Bishop Lithuania.
But he took this logic.
No, it hasn't waited for that. Like that's the issue. It had that way. It was that.
Yes.
Yeah. Every culture is basically a bitch. You don't get something. Sepnical Sentinel Island, where we live in absolute isolation. Because every culture is a mixture. But you have to take this mixture of all these different cultures and make your unique set of features that defines you as a nation. For instance, what we talk about this Zedi or Radulitsa. So we have to decide whether you celebrate Zedi, how Belarusians are honoring their dead. Are they celebrating Zedi? And then those who celebrate Radulitsa are Russians? Or maybe they are Belarusians celebrate Radulitsa. There is just this marching of the right. But you have to make decisions because that's our nation built in fact. And this applies to all other things, like also and your attitude to Vladimir, your attitude to Rovneda, your attitude to Hitler, your attitude to Stalin, but Nikolai first and for second and so on. So this is what you just have to develop.
Yeah, it's scared. It's scared. But also, like, people didn't want to come and discuss it with Damінікас from Belarus because it's a too radical position. Because people don't feel safe in this discussion. When in Lithuania, if Damінікас was more kind of, not denying that Belarus is a mix of cultures. It's not a Slavic culture. It's not a Slavic countries, right? And what is a Slavic culture? Slavs are now living all across Europe. Like, what is a Slavic culture?
Are you talking about the language? Are you talking about the language in Belarus? No, you're talking a Slavic language. Everybody 100%.
The different features, traits of a culture. So languages is one of them.
Right. So let's name the features that we need to assess.
Yes. Language, celebrations. Well, the best, the way people know things. It's just too hard to name as a category. The way people look at life, the way people build relationships.
Let's quantify it. Let's take at the exact parameters and the system.
There are a lot of problems.
Oh, sure, yeah, it's a very interesting...
It's very simple. If we are actually quantifying those parameters, when we're assessing them one by one, we will definitely get the position that it is a Slavic country.
This is speculation. I wouldn't.
So let's do the examination.
But not now. But it's a good idea.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, it's a Slavic country in all countries.
Oh, you're telling it, and that's why people not coming to discuss.
No, but Lithuanian language is Baltic language. It is a pretty presentation. Yeah, and then if you want to become Baltic, then you are saying that you want to join Lithuania. Because of our but you want to say opposite. That with two people.
Well, actually, this argument in this question would be inconsequential if there weren't all those disinformation narratives about the Grand Duchy. If Belarusians woke up one day and said, you know what, we want to be Balts and rediscover our Baltic heritage, because there's not enough of that, because there's not enough of Baltic heritage in Belarus, whatever. That would be perfectly fine. But when you are pretending to be Balts that were the Balts who established it, so that gets us to that.
No, the problem with Belarus is not that you are Slav, so you can be Balts if it is defined, but the problem you can't choose. You just want to be absolutely everything. You want to be...
Yeah, you want to sit on two chairs.
From the of Lithuania, you want to be... You want to be Rzeczpospolita, you want to be Soviet Empire, all the parties...
You want to be Baltic, you want to be Slavic, you want to be Lithuania, you want to be Polish.
Okay, I want to tell the last bit. Look, the same people who say, state language of document language of Grand Duchy of Lithuania was Slavic. Well, okay, there was all Lithuanian language, but we are also both. So is Slavic your language, or are you both? Because you can't be both.
Why? I think it's a problem. I think it's a problem. I think it's a great beat.
Because Lithuanians say state language, Slavic language is not ours, it was Slavic, because we are both. This is Slavic. And you say our document language was ours, which means that you accept that you are Slavs. But at the same time you say we are both.
Yeah, I think
but you both.
Yeah, I think it's more in how you this is. Because let's just talk about this for a second. Because Slavs and Balts, there is no such thing. Those were names for groups of tribes, right? That was happening more than 1,000 years ago.
Yes.
So, and today there's so much mixing the context and using those terms that point out at the groups and at the phenomena that were happening in that time.
But now, who is actually the context?
The only true answer today is both Lithuanians are genetically Baltic and also Belarusians are mixed because
But genetics and culture are two different theories that are not related.
Culture, similar to focus the Baltic.
No,
The Alexans, they have more features that maybe those mixed tribes had, right? Well, you cannot say that those in the Slavic, like people say this, of course, even majority of Bosnians say, 99% will say, May 5 is a Slavic country, which is a Slavic country because of the language, because of the religion, or because of the religion. And then, yeah, culture is hard to measure.
And you know, if you were balls, then I would ask you this, like,
no, in the balls, it's a mix.
Some now you already Slavinized. You don't.
But they were talking about, you know, the period of the Metro and Dutch, and we're talking about modern days, mostly 20th century disinformation, history revisionism, and that simply doesn't hold water. That's the issue. And that's why I'm putting your your tongue. That's why I'm trying to, you know, so it's the generations of the periods and so on.
Yeah, sorry, continue to television to ask about the traits of Baltic culture in today's Belarus. Also, I just remember those there are those in forest. You can find those wooden totems, kind of. They were engraved. This kind of pagan kind of forest stuffs. I don't know how it's called. It's just like a wooden.
Carvings.
Yeah, carvings. And they're there.
So
it's
you,
also and also
of course you can have something. Of course, we are not saying like up until Minsk there were like Baltic, you know.
And also those traditions that are not connected to the Orthodox culture and Christianity. For example, those this shows how to beautify the whole. You know, to build those. It's of course, but well, I guess it's maybe it's pagan though.
Yes, but
those souls.
But you know, Ukrainians also. How do you differ yourself? Okay, Lithuanians is, how do you differ yourself from Ukrainians, from Latvians, from Estonians, by the way? It's also important because, you know, work influence is also a thing in our region. How do you supposed to define yourself from?
Yeah, by the what defines, I think, those is the lack of political authority on its own territory. That's reality, right? There's the country is only independent in total for 40 years in total. This is what defines. That's the problem. Yes,
that's the problem. That's why you can't make. That's the result of the lack of identity. Because you
of what?
Identity.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Yes. Look, that's what I'm saying. You have to build Belarusian identity. You are separating it from everything.
But it should be based on the truth. Like you have to differentiate what's Slavs, what's Baltic. Like read the real sources.
Yeah, it's something that's no national story is based on hyperfederal. It's like every national.
But we are doing the best. We are
95% would be satisfied if 95% are likes.
Yeah, that's the problem. Because in Lithuania we believe like Birute and many others like queens of Greece. They are inventions of the 19th century. But the problem is that Lithuanian narrative and myth very well aligns to actual scientific facts.
Worldwide.
And that is recognized worldwide for many, many centuries. And Belarusian goes completely in different direction.
Based on Kremlins.
Yeah, it's based on Kremlin.
It's another history book.
It's a direct contradiction to everything the West has to comply, and a direct resonance with the Federalists did.
Yes. No, maybe I want to explain why it is like that your Western authors are writing, like the text of Western authors, they support your claims. And because Lithuania is closer to the Western market, especially, the other schools. Also,
why is Earth round? Because the scientists that were making the examinations were closer to the people who believe that Earth is a globe. I mean, it's that kind of argument.
Yeah.
It is. But besides the science, yes, in the past.
Yeah. No, but
history is science. They have their methods. They have their, you know.
Yeah, no, but what Damінікас wrote is not directly those. Yeah, like history science, but not every historian is a science. It's like, right? They can just compare it to history.
Okay, so who's more reliable, Krosevich or Snyder?
Well, I mean, no, exactly. Who is more reliable?
It's a very simple answer. Snyder.
Well, it's absolutely very not simple answer. I mean, you always Krosevich is a local, and he was maybe excavating the ground himself, and he was maybe seeing what is there.
Krosevich is a local. Krosevich is a cunt.
Yes,
he is simply spreading disinformation and lies based on I don't know what reasons.
You get into a look.
Well, Snyder, well, so more, he even doesn't speak. He doesn't know how to read, you know, this.
But his whole life is like studying history, facts of this region.
Krosevich also.
No, look, okay, not the
story, but.
No, he's a propagandist.
No, because you know, to be historian, like to be approved, you don't have just to write a book and.
I'll recognize as Krosevich as
to defend yourself, you have to defend yourself among other scholars. Other scholars have to approve you, and you know, okay, there is also Orwell. He wrote a book, and he wrote like the true history. He explained. We had a meeting with him. We asked a lot of questions, and he said, "You know what? I'm not a historian."
Yeah. So this is what every time what happens.
He's teaching people history facts. He's saying what is true Lithuania, and then when it's not convenient for him, what he's supposed to do.
History to the historian.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's very just hard. Yeah, no, I agree that there is a need to develop this word identity and this method. If you ground it in life, it's not perfect. So yeah,
but I mean, you know, it's not just Western historians; it's institutions. Cambridge University, Oxford University, that publish a lot of books. Davis, who jokingly put Lukashenko on the first page of his book called Litva. Like every proper author that is widely recognized is more or less echoing Lithuanian narrative, and it is
for sure. That's for sure.
And it is not something up for opinion. It is simply a scientific truth by this.
It's very much because
it is not.
It's just like for most probably those Western authors didn't even go to Belarus to talk with it.
It's not about talking. It's about examining the chronicles and so on.
Yeah, but do you think Snyder wrote those chronicles?
No, sure. Read them
himself.
Sure.
You read the chronicles?
Of course, of course. There are many ways to read the Chronicles.
Yeah, but
people using AI these days can have linguists read the Chronicle. Wait, all the Chronicles they have translation.
Yeah, what I'm saying that the person who doesn't speak, you know, Belarusian or knows Cyrillic, sponges in studying statistics.
No, that's in Hajj and Volhynia Chronicle. It is translated in English. Other many chronicles I translated in English like years ago.
Yeah, but the question of how you translate it, because translation itself is already transforming the original material.
So you know they're done properly, and that's
properly. But it's like properly on what and where.
I cannot talk on this, but I'm sure it's fine.
You know, Frost definitely knows Russian. Frost definitely knows Russian. He's been examining Ukraine and the Lithuanian part of history of Ukraine for all his whole career. And you know, knowing the Lithuanian language is not that vital nowadays. If those translations were somehow incorrect, someone would have already pointed it out. By this point, it's just speculation.
There's discussions like all the time around it. There's not enough people who will comment on that. No, but
those are done properly.
No, but there are definitely exaggerations in the videos that you show, and you also definitely have exaggerations on your presentation.
No, really, the only one exaggeration that I purposefully made is the one of juxtapositioning Vilna is Figna with the Buzmadarusami song. That's the only one exaggeration. Everything else is more or less what actually happens. And you know, when I come to talk to you, and that's the last time, everything is fine. But when you talk, and unfortunately Ukrainians did to come here, because I asked certain Ukrainians to come here.
when Ukrainians engage Belarusians in bars and clubs and events and so on, we report that bullshit. When they start talking about your history, Kiev and Rus, hey, look, we're Litva, and Ukrainians are like, you're an idiot, this is disinformation, Russian propaganda, what are you talking about? We are fighting this shit, tooth and nail, and you are now spreading part of it, and they are putting Belarusian in plain sight. That can't happen, definitely. And yeah, as I said, not in absolutes, but in generals, it is a very, very, very big problem. It is widespread. It is not an exaggeration. This is a 30-minute video. I once said Natalia, colleague, but look, if you want to, I can make 4 hours of Belarusian bullshit. And a colleague said, but you know, you can make the same about the things. I said, fine, be my guest, please, find it. We'll find nothing. Nothing of these bad.
Take a picture, you can take get goddess and some other authors.
We have nowadays we have
Finish, I think, wrote the best Belarusian history book. His book. I think it's the best history. It's the most modern with photos. It's very good.
Trust me, nothing is good as come out of crusade.
He couldn't defend this book in the world with other scholars.
Yeah, if it was very good, it would have been translated or published by Oxford.
It's a crusade, it's just very low quality. Well, he is trying to be historian, but he's very low quality. On every page, he's repeating some old myth. Just it's not even Belarusian, but just some old misconceptions that have been spoken.
What do you imagine should be written in Belarus history books? It should be written that for 500, for 100 years or more, Belarus was a part of was occupied or what?
Yes.
Yeah, but this is not writing history.
Why Latvians write that? Why Latvians write it that they had been occupied by Livonia and all that? Why heck they
because I guess there is some historical continuity between the current Latvian national state and those that point. Because the thing is, the Belarus never had this kind of own national state.
Latvia also.
You know, but Latvia. People who were before Latvians, so Latvians are probably based on some historical books.
Majority of Latvians, of current Latvians, are Latgalians that moved to Zemdalia and Kurona. And actual Latvia is developed on the basis of this mixture. But the current Latgalians, the source of Latvians, they actually hate Latvians. They say that there are separate nations, we need autonomy. It's also Latvian is very, I know.
That's not join Lithuania.
Yes, Catholics often, and so it's Latvian identity as a very, but it's really worth study how Latvians managed to build their own identity around songs, around some traditions, celebrations like
Vulgarians were the foundation of the Latvian nation, no?
Well, the source. But actually, the Latvian, all this Latvian language and all this modern Latvia, it emerged on the lands of Zemdalia and Papua.
Yeah, so there was some source that it was monoethnic, and it was an ethnos, right? But for Belarus, what is such source? If it's a mix, if it's a complete...
You can have Borash, Krivich, and some...
You got some Holospend and Krivich before.
Yeah, those are three.
Krivich, that was what century? Do you think you
have a Dutch...
12th century Krivich.
You have autonomy, Dutch of Poland was autonomous it had autonomy and its own identity within Kiev and Rus, and it had its own identity within Grand Duchy of Lithuania.
I can tell you what you should write in your book. I'm on that slide. It's an opinion. I will read it to you.
Yeah, no, I think Polska is a good idea. I don't know why historians don't want... Maybe I know why they don't want to discuss it now, because they think, and I also think, that it's not time to discuss it now.
Yeah, we know why. Because Kremlin pushes this Litvinism narrative. you can feel it very.
In what ways? Like
Because there are hundreds of bloggers online who non-stop talk this Litvinism out. And they go listen to them. And then, and even within Belarus state, of course we can, it's 100% that there are a lot of Kremlin paid
Can you read it? Where's the light switches over there?
Yeah, I hear it.
Yeah. So yeah, I actually thought this will come up, and when I talk about what would be an alternative for Belarusians, so the Principality of Polsk. Yeah, but they want short-lived other principalities, so it's a mix. So when you take a look at the whole region and at the period of how it developed and how everything was done there, there's a lot to unpack. What you should write, and what every Lithuanian agrees on almost, is about you being civilizationally a little bit higher. If we're talking about Age of Empires, we are finishing the age, and you have just started the new age. You have a masonry tradition, you have written language, you have a set of laws that are very clearly defined. In Lithuania, it was pagan tradition that was a law; it wasn't clearly defined. So it's much more advanced. You are dreaming about Vilnius, which is ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. Nothing of what you have said or Marzaluk is saying, nothing is true. Vilnius was very much Lithuanian and Baltic, and only during the time of Gediminas and later on it became multicultural as every capital in Europe.
You can see that Poland is also very multicultural because they were huge community.
And Poland and Turok, they were, I don't know, like 3 or almost 400 years before Vilnius mentioned. And they were very, very important parts of Orthodox civilization. Belarusians are defenders of Eastern Horde from Europe. When we fought Moscow in 16th century, what lands helped a lot? What lands and suffered the most? It was Belarusians. The siege of Polos, the siege of Vitebsk, Mogilov, Smolensk, and so on. This is what you should take pride in. And there's a red star there. But through wisdom and courage, after many long centuries, the ancestors of the Belarusians rose to the elite of the state, which had been founded and expanded by Lithuanians. Because in the 17th and 18th centuries, you can definitely find some nobles in a very high positions that it is hard to project as Lithuanians. They were Orthodox, they spoke Ruthenian, and they didn't have the myth of being Lithuanians. They were usually, rooting themselves from roomy kids. So this is what you should put in.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. But yeah, it was like maybe the best time to start putting it forward. That could be like maybe that would even facilitate the kind of reconciliation of nation. That is no. What I'm talking about that because now after 2020, many people they say, oh no, we don't go back. That we cannot turn the page. And there are Belarusians who support Lukashenko, and there are those who don't want to forget the 20, and that support Pahonia. So maybe this could be a way to reconcile Belarusian nation, because both symbols now very contradictional. The cabbage and the national, the Pahonia, they both very contradictional. So maybe this could be really when it's time
the time is actually high, and the time is running out because, as I've said, when the invasion happens, if it happens, we will go to fight tooth and nail on every possible domain, including warfare. And Lithuanian historians and Lithuanian civic society will absolutely floor everything Belarusian. Belarusian not because of Belarusian, but because it is Litvinistic in most sense. Then it will be too late. Then it will be, you will be just...
Can you repeat that? What you said?
I mean, when the invasion happens, we will be fighting...
Yeah,
we will be fighting on every domain that I mentioned.
Okay, yeah.
When we'll come to our history, within the historians and civic society will floor everything Belarusians have done. All their bullshit historiography about Navafluda being the first capital, about union of equals, about Vilnius and Aukštaitija being some kind of 50-50 region, and so on and so on. And then everything will be in absolute ruins. You think you have something now, it is built on very very, very, very false and very weak foundations, and those foundations will absolutely crumble. So I think it is best time now to turn the tape back a little bit and start taking this direction, because when the invasion happens, if you have this direction, this will put you on the side of Ukraine very firmly. This will put you on the opposition to Russia, and this will deconflict the whole situation with the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. And this will be also truthful, which will be very much beneficial. It will be a very strong, authentic identity of Ruthenians as well.
Yeah, I would say that, Belarusians also often say that the Lithuanians don't want to share the history, but in our history books, in school books, everywhere it's written that the facts that were really true, that the language, the Lithuanian language was a state language, the
majority.
Yeah, literature. Now that's the biggest part of Grand Duchy is now Belarus. We are not denying that you are not there, and that you don't we want to share. We want to remember. And I remember what I saw. At first when I saw people having these Pogonia plaques.
I was glad. I was very glad. Yeah, I was like, "Fuck yeah, let's go."
They are our friends. But then when we heard that they twisted the story, and you might say that only the extremes say about Žmuts. You know what? I don't know a Belarusian that didn't tell me to the face that Lithuania is Žmuts.
Yeah, but also 90% Belarusian would know. It's like people can be laughing, people can say with humor, okay, those Mudine or something. But this is it's like a joke that the same in Lithuania. There are many jokes that, this guy from Belarus. But those things are happening, and those small, maybe not very polite jokes.
Definitely are jokes, and I do not include them in the radios. Yeah, definitely. There are jokes.
His policy of Belarusians are just Russian, or the Belarusians are just Ukrainians, and the two countries should decide who.
Well, there might be some people who are extreme.
No, not all of you guys. All of you pronounce the name of the country in a Russified way.
I pronounce Belarus.
Yeah, Belarusian, according to English grammar, should be pronounced Belarusian.
Yeah, that's why when Frost said Belarusian, that's why I put the Belarusian.
And everyone is using that.
Because it's a problem with English grammar, not.
And because in the 20th century you called yourself by Yellow Russia. And that's stuck. And that's
it's not to be called ourselves. It's a Sovietized name of the country.
When the first literature about Belarus and the history of Belarusians and so on came in 20th century, in English it wasn't Belarus or Belaya Rus. No, it was by Yellow Russia.
Because it was occupied by the Soviet Union, and they just established the name that was Russified.
Okay, so which is this true? Which is the correct?
Belaya Rus.
No, but Belarus is the correct name. It's a self-name.
Yeah, and I know that they changed it after they reclaimed independence in the 90s.
Yes,
because it was Belarusia, and they decided to the full name is Belaya.
When Belarus was independent, it never called itself Belarusia. It was when Soviets came, they created this.
I need to recheck with the authors, because I think there was the Belarusian authors who actually referred to themselves as by Yellow Russia.
It's a language because on Wikipedia, for example, it is still on Wikipedia or on other Wikipedia. You see, in North of Russia, they still use the language.
Viskas?
Yeah, no, very interesting. Unfortunately, not so many Russians came, and
It talks to me when I have a screen behind me and I can show the.
No, but I definitely agree that
we should have more conversation like that with more people.
I agree.
You see, this is what happens when you come to know Belarusians, not talk a lot of bullshit.
Петр, так що робити?
Обмірковувати далі, шукати, придумляти. Подстави для білоруської ідентичності.
Так що нам не ради тут?
Because it's more difficult than just build it on, national pride. If you don't have it, you need to be smarter, and it's hard to. People are stupid. It's hard to explain complicated things to people. It's like with legalizing drugs, right? No, exactly. It's very people are we are against drugs, which doesn't mean we want people to go for 10 years in prison for passing a spliff, right? But it's really hard to explain to people why they shouldn't just say I'm against drugs, because it leads to aggression towards innocent people, blah blah. And people get so it's like the more the topic is complicated, it's harder to build identity on, all right, and to invent more complex ideas. Grounded on more complex ideas. No, just for the media.
Если мы герб поменяем, все нормально будет. Станет ли лучше? Станет лучше.
Владимир,
Так я же не умею.
Я думаю, что станет. Я думаю, что
на
есть
что
шанс.
менять?
Я думаю, что
на что менять?
На что менять?
Медведя
Вот
или
питание
кабана?
для историков.
Так сразу будет все нормально. Проблем не будет.
Я думаю, что есть правда в тым, что пагоня раз'ядноўвае таксама, не толькі аб'ядноўвае, але і раз'ядноўвае беларусаў якраз праз тую гістарычную праўду, праз тыя гістарычныя падзеі, якія,
Переконал тебе все-таки Дамінікас, так?
Так.
От молодец, а? Шаунолис.